I'm Catherine Solomon, a licensed therapist and a virtual coach, and I love getting to help couples connect more and communicate easier. Today in this video, I'm going to talk about a really simple thing that you can do each week to keep your relationship at its strongest place and continue to stay connected regardless of all the things that life throws at you. Before I jump in, please like this video and subscribe so that you can make sure and get all of the videos that come out each week. So here is something that I have seen over and over as I've worked with couples throughout the last couple years. And really what is so interesting is that, of course, there are really big things that can happen if we're talking about like an affair, for example, that obviously majorly disrupts a healthy relationship. But then there's also this really seemingly small ritual or routine or habit that healthy couples have that really sets them apart from other relationships. And a lot of times when I'm working with couples and I will ask them, because what we're talking about today is kind of having like just a simple 10-minute check-in. But when I've worked with couples and we follow up like, hey, have you been consistently having your check-ins? And they say no, and that is a lot of times the beginning of the breakdown for where things kind of negatively started the domino effect of them feeling less connected, less understood, more conflict, all of those kind of things. If you're anything like most other people in the world, you're probably very busy, right? And so you get up early, if you have kids, you're dealing with kids and, feeding everybody, getting everyone dressed, doing hair. If it's the school season, then you're taking kids to school, or if there's daycare, or maybe you're a stay-at-home mom, and so your days might be structured a little bit differently, but it's still probably pretty go. And even if you don't have kids, maybe you're just going to work and you're working your 8 to 5, and then you get home and you have dinner, whether you have to cook it or you're just warming up leftovers, you're grabbing takeout or whatever the case is, and you're probably like exhausted. And somewhere in there, you've got to figure out how to work out, make your dentist appointments, talk to your mom, check on your grandparents. Like there's a million different things. Walk the dog, make sure the dog has enough food. Like there's a million different things. And so a lot of times, just in the busyness and chaos of life, if you're not really being intentional to step back, talk with your significant other, and really like check in on each other, you could just kind of feel like the days and then the week becomes a blur. There's a difference between being able to, effectively run a household and make sure that there's no like actual fires that happen in your week, and being really connected and feeling like you emotionally are on the same page. Or if you're going through a really hard season, that you feel support from one another, or just like really understanding where each other is at, because that can change and fluctuate day to day. And so if you're going weeks and weeks at a time without really checking in and having that heart to heart, then you're missing out on a lot that you need to know about your spouse, and your relationship can quickly drift because you can feel alone, you can feel isolated, you can feel unsupported. Like there's so many different things that can happen. And so I just really want to even start off and highlight, with all the work that I've seen with couples, this is such a small but pivotal piece that if you will be intentional to do, can honestly change so much for your relationship. So why did I say 10 minutes and why did I say weekly? The first is that 10 minutes is not a very long time. I think sometimes when people talk about a check-in or they hear that phrase from a therapist or anybody when it comes to relationships, it feels like this long, lengthy, dragged out process, and honestly you want to just stab your eyeballs out just even thinking about it. And also a really long sit down is not realistic week to week, or I would say every single week. Like that's not realistic for most people. And if you want to be intentional to see this through, it has to be realistic. 10 minutes is also really feasible if you're doing this frequently. You don't actually even need something super long. A lot of times the repetitive frequency is better than just being like, oh, once a month we're gonna sit down for like 50 hours and like talk about stuff. Doing things in small increments is actually better in general and honestly more feasible for your relationship. Another way to think about it is that short, real check-ins every week will do more for you over a year than one big heart-to-heart every couple months. 10 minutes is short enough that you don't have to talk yourself out of it. If you're super drained, you can do anything for 10 minutes. And it also still allows you adequate enough time to check in on each other and just share where you're at. It also allows you to talk about some logistics if you need to, but you definitely don't have to. It just kind of depends on the week and your relationship. And then if I haven't already kind of danced around why weekly, again, more frequently in small increments of time is better than just one large chunk of time, but less frequently. It's also helpful to consider if there's something that happens on Sunday, for example, that really frustrates you guys, or just some tension happens and you know that you're gonna have a check-in Sunday afternoon, or you know that you're gonna check in Monday, like whatever it is for your day of the week. It's really nice because you can know mentally, okay, we're gonna sit down and we're gonna have time and space to repair and talk about it, versus we're just so busy and things are so chaotic and we don't really have quiet time away from our kids, and so it's probably just not gonna happen and we're just gonna shove it under the rug, and like all that does is create resentment and piles up a lot of things. And so having that mentally to look forward to is really, really helpful for knowing that you're gonna repair potential situations that may have come up. Here's something that I also really want you to hear and understand, because I know that some people watching this might be thinking like, well, there's no way on earth my spouse is ever gonna do that. I've suggested it before, we tried it once or twice, it didn't work, they won't do it, it's just hopeless. Totally hear that, I've heard that many times before. I would say that obviously it's very helpful to have your spouse completely on board, but if they're not, you can still bring some of these elements to the table and do it in such a casual way that allows you to gather how they're doing, it allows you to share how you are doing, and it doesn't have to be so structured. And I think sometimes you can still get the point across of this kind of check-in without the intense structure that I think pushes a lot of people away. Okay, let's get practical and talk about how to successfully have this check-in. First is the setup. It's a great idea if you can to pick a consistent time and place so that it's easy to just know and feel there's like a familiarity between where and when you're doing it. Some people like to do it Friday at the end of the week because they're just debriefing before the weekend. Some people like to do it Sunday afternoon before they're starting their week on Monday. Really, whatever works for you. Some people do it in the car because that is just really and honestly the only way that their kids are gonna be like sort of quiet for them to be able to talk about it. Some people do it when their kids are asleep. Some people, like there's just a million different ways. Some people go on a walk because they can put their kid in the stroller and then just like spend that time talking. Like you do what works best for you in your relationship, but find something consistent and something that is just like easy to do. I wouldn't necessarily say like, oh, we're gonna go to a coffee shop and do it, because that is not always feasible. And if you're sick, does that mean you're just not gonna do it? Like you want it to be in an area or in a space that's super easy, you're there weekly already, and so it's just like a no-brainer. You wanna do this also with your phones put away as much as possible, because you really wanna give each other undivided attention. 10 minutes is not that long, right? If you need your phone because you're like pulling up questions or something, that's totally great as well. But for the most part, you don't want to be scrolling or like distracted. And you can also, when we're thinking about the structure of what the actual check-in entails, I will give you some more details on a resource that I have for you, but a general kind of way that you can think about it is you're gonna look back, look inward, and look forward. You're kind of touching on all three of those little touch points to have a really well-balanced check-in with each other. This can be a great time for you to convey appreciation from something that you've seen over the week. It can be an opportunity to talk about logistics really quickly for the week moving forward. Like there's lots of different things that you can include. It also just depends on week to week, maybe what's happening, where your stress levels are at, how you're doing if the season of life you're going through is really difficult. And so really it's just like an emotional check-in. It can also just fluctuate within your relationship too. Before I tell you more about the resource that I have to guide you really step by step with this, I want to give you an example of something that when you're in a rough season and you're not checking in, it can easily cause things to accidentally kind of pile up. This is a personal example, but I actually shared pretty recently on social media that my husband and I are walking through infertility, and it's been really difficult. I also recently was diagnosed with PCOS. And at 30 years old, I'm not gonna lie, that was like very just like gut-wrenching and just difficult to absorb that really big piece of information. And so it's just been a really heavy, stressful last couple months for us. And the other week on a Saturday, my husband was gonna work in the garage, just like clean things out, organize things, whatever, and our son was sleeping. And so I was like, I'm gonna sit down and journal. I've got to process some things. I've got to take time to just like pray and think about everything and just like take a moment, to myself because I just felt really, really stressed. And so sat down to do that. A little bit later, not even that long, 10 minutes or less, my husband comes in. He wants me to look at some things that he wanted us to get rid of in the garage. And this was a conversation that we've had before where like I'm trying to sell some things on Facebook Marketplace, for example, and he's just like, let's just throw it away, or let's just donate it, like I'm just done with it, you know? And we just see differently for some different things, and that's okay. But in that moment, I just felt really stressed because I was like, I'm not gonna be able to sit here and journal if I have to go outside and deal with that, and I don't wanna make those decisions. Like, that's just one more stressful thing on my plate. And he just goes like, okay, like I know he wasn't mad, but he was just kind of like defeated. So he went back outside, but then I felt bad because I know the garage matters to him. And so I was like, okay, let me go on Facebook and lower all of the prices for the things that I posted. Let me go in this mom group that I'm in and offer some things for free. Like, let me just be really proactive. I know this matters to him, and like, let me just address some of these things. And I ended up spending like 30 minutes doing that. And then my son woke up way early from his nap, and I just felt so overwhelmed. I felt extra stressed. I felt so grumpy and so irritable. And it was a situation where like it wasn't about the garage. It wasn't about the fact that he wanted to clear things out. It was just what I needed to process journaling in the stressful season of life that we're in. And so all that to say, it kind of just compounded and kept piling up. And we were not like necessarily missing the mark. Like, he knew that I was stressed. I knew that he cared about the garage. And I think sometimes organizing and things like that is therapeutic for him in his own way. And so all that to say, we had not been doing a good job at this point really checking in with each other. And so that was kind of a very eye-opening thing where it didn't escalate or become like this huge issue, but it could have. And I realized like, wow, we let the chaos of our life get in the way of checking in regularly with each other. And so I just share that very vulnerably with you because I want you to realize how much it can really help keep you on the same page and keep you feeling like you're linked arms with them on the same team. You versus the world and the problem, not you versus each other. So let me tell you about the resource that I created because honestly, I knew that this was something that couples needed, and I kept sharing it in my counseling sessions all the time. And then my husband and I wanted our own. And so many years ago, I created this resource, and I've just continued to add to it over the years because I really am always trying to make resources better and learning new things. But it's called the Ultimate Couples Check-In Guide. You can get access to it in the description. There's a link for you, but basically it will have multiple different check-ins, but you can focus on just the weekly if you're like, that's all that I have the capacity or the desire for, totally fine. But it will have weekly, quarterly, and yearly check-ins. And so I love that people at the end of the year love to just reflect and then plan and create goals and create a vision for the next year. And so I have that completely outlined for you. And then quarterly, taking all of those things from your end of year and then really just evaluating throughout the year, how are the things you said were important to you? Are you prioritizing them? I teach you how to create your values and really outline them so that you're in sync as a family and as a couple, because your values are what can be the foundation for guiding you to either accomplish or not accomplish certain things throughout the year. And so I outline all of that. And then, like I said, with the weekly, you have specific questions to talk through. There's a space to process and write things out. There's word banks for you if you're struggling with vocabulary or like emotionally feeling kind of trapped. So it's a really, really good resource. We've been using it for years. Like I said, so many couples have loved it. And so definitely highly recommend grabbing a copy. And then as we close, I want to talk about a couple things that I would really be paying attention to so that it doesn't feel like your check-in is a waste of time or like it turns into this like huge mess. One of the number one ways that this conversation can go south super quickly is if you sit down to talk about stuff and you just start complaining and listing out all of your grievances and what was hard from the week. Then it's not really a check-in, it just turns into like who did what and you're pointing fingers, and it's not going to be a productive conversation. So this is not necessarily meant for an in-depth repair. It can be if the repair is quick and you guys are more in tune with being able to repair quickly and all of the skills that it takes to do that. But this is not the time to really like hash out things that have gone wrong. You can set a time to do that within your check-in, like, hey, in an hour, I want us to be able to talk about this, or like, hey, tomorrow, like, let's sit down and blah, blah, blah. But your check-in is more of like a broad thing so that you don't get sucked into something super negative, because then you're never gonna wanna check in with each other. The second is to make sure that you're not doing it at a terrible time, right? Don't do it when your kids are screaming bloody murder. Don't do it when you're hangry and overstimulated. Pick a time that's going to be best for you, and sometimes that's trial and error because you might pick a time that think it's going to work and then it doesn't, and so it's okay to shift it around as needed, but just making sure that you're very cognizant of like when and where in the environment, because that will help set you up for the most success. It's also really important that you take turns. It's not really okay for one person just to yap the entire time and not listen and give space to their spouse. So make sure that you're both answering the questions, you're both taking time to share, and it feels like a partnership, a give and take, versus just one person is like hogging the entire time. Also, do not skip the appreciation. Say what brought you joy. Say the thing that you loved about your spouse. Say the thing that you're so grateful for. I don't care how cheesy it is, but this life is full of so many thankless things. It is so good that you vocalize appreciation to your spouse. So here's your homework, 2 things. First, grab a copy of the Ultimate Couples Check-In Guide. And the second thing is talk about and pick a day that you're gonna have your first check-in. Thanks for watching here. I can't wait to hear how your check-ins are going. If you have any questions or follow-up thoughts, put them in the comments below. Make sure that you like and subscribe, and I will see you next time.